Hi guys, Sarah here and welcome to Novel Expectations. Today I'm coming to you with my 28th weekly wrap-up for 2016. So I finished 2 books this week, one I enjoyed, one not so much. But let's jump into the challenges first. So for my summer book bingo, I am currently at 8 books out of 25 books completed, and we're now, 2 weeks into July, so I still have all the rest of this month and all of August. So fingers crossed I can get through, those last, can I do math? No. 18 books? Uh-oh. I better get reading. For my Goodreads challenge, I'm 6 books ahead of schedule for the year. For my A to Z Authors challenge, still at 18 out of 26. A to Z Titles challenge, still at 17 out of 26. For my 2016 How Many Pages challenge, I have read 16,615 pages out of 25,000 pages. That puts me at 66% complete for the year. The Jelly Belly Jelly Bean Challenge, no flavors done. And the Listopia Challenge, I'm still on level 1, 9 out of 25 books. So what books have I finished this week? The one that was kind of meh, and I hate to say this because I really was hoping I was going to like this, was Tyranny of Petticoats, edited by Jessica Spotswood. I only gave this 3 stars on Goodreads, and yeah, I just really didn't care for it. There were 2 stories in here that really stuck out that I really did enjoy. One was about a woman who, to get out of a marriage that was decided on by her father, she gets on a train and heads to Wyoming and becomes a school marm, essentially. The other story was about 2 sisters during the gold rush in Alaska who owned a bar or a pub or whatever you want to call it. And that one was really good too. Those are the only 2 that I really, really enjoyed. The one about the marriage was called Pearls, and the one about the sisters, I'm sorry, bear with me just a second here, was called The Legendary Garrett Girls. Pearls was by Pearls was by Beth Revis, and The Legendary Garrett Girls was by Y.S. Lee. So those were my 2 favorites in the entire collection. And when I say favorites, they were still maybe only 3.5 stars. My biggest issue with this book was the stories were far too short. I think a lot of the authors, especially the 2 books I've mentioned, or 2 stories I've mentioned, took on too big of a problem to tell within 20 to 25 pages. They could have been expanded on so much more and been so fantastic if they had been full-length novels and really developed the characters and really developed the settings. Like, the idea was there and it was great. The execution wasn't that fantastic. I mean, maybe this is part of the reason I don't read YA, is a lot of YA like this. I just feel like it was kind of glossed over a little bit. I don't want to say I hated this book, because I didn't hate this book. I thought it was meh. It didn't live up to the expectations that I thought in my head. Now, I wasn't the only one. I looked at a lot of reviews on Goodreads and people were saying the same things. The one thing that I really liked about this book was how it was chronologically told. Like, the stories went from the oldest, I think, which took place in the 1700s, up until the 1960s. So they went in that chronological order. So that was really, really good. It would be nice, actually, maybe to see another collection, but if I could make some suggestions, not that anybody's going to listen to me, but like, this was 15 stories. Maybe cut it down to 10 and allow those stories to be longer. Like, this book could be thicker. Why not? Give the authors a little more leniency. Tell them that they, have whatever the novella length is. Or put them out in a collection, volume 1, volume 2, volume 3, and have like 5 stories per volume. And really allow the stories to be expanded upon. I think that would make them so much better. The other thing that I really did like about this was at the end of every single short story. Oh, the one by Marissa Meyer was really good too. It was called Gold in the Roots of the Grass. And it was about a girl, a Chinese girl, in, I think it was Deadwood, during the mining times. And she spoke to ghosts. It was very supernatural, but it was still really, really interesting, and I really enjoyed that one too. Just as I'm flipping through the book, I just happened to remember that one. And they were, all 3 of those stories I'm talking about were one right after another. And I think one of the reasons I really enjoyed them is because they took place in one of my favorite time periods historically, which is like the Wild West. Oh, there we go. Yeah, like the 1800s. I just love that. So, at the end of every story, there is an author's note, and the author explains why they wrote this story and what their background is in it, and did they have any knowledge of it prior to of that time period or that place. And sometimes the authors even mentioned, if you're interested in this topic, here are some other books. That is fantastic, and I thought that was great. But I think my biggest thing is these stories could have been so much better. The potential was there. I just don't think the execution was done properly. So as for the other book that I finished this week, I finished listening to To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, narrated by Sissy Spacek. She did an amazing job at the narration. I really, really loved it, and I really loved listening to this book again. I read it the first time. This is my first time listening to it on audio. This book was published in 1960. I actually thought it was later than that, but earlier than that, before the 1960s. But I was wrong when I looked on Goodreads. I gave this book 5 stars again. I loved it when I read it in high school. I loved it now. The characters are wonderful. Atticus and Scout and Jim and Dill, and like I said, I read this book last in high school, so we're going back at least 20 years since I read it. And listening to it in my car on the way to and from work, I was like nodding, like, yep, I remember that, I remember that. A lot of the stuff that I remember was kind of out of order. I'm like, did that happen in this book? And then it would happen a bit later. I'm like, oh yes, that's right. I don't need to go on about this story. I think we all know it and love it. I'm so thrilled that I got a chance to listen to it on audio. If you get the chance, I highly recommend checking it out on audio because it really, really is good. She really does a fantastic job. So now on to what I'm currently reading. I'm currently listening to The Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley. That is my car reading. And this is a story, for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, it's an older book. It's been around for a number of years. I think they just did the 20th anniversary of it. I can't remember. I read it a long time ago. At least 10 to 15 years ago, I think I read this. And I'm really enjoying listening to the narration of this because it is on audio and it is narrated by Davina Porter, which makes me unbelievably happy because she is the one who narrates Outlander. It's like Claire's reading the story to me. For those of you who are unfamiliar with The Mists of Avalon, it is essentially a telling of King Arthur's court from the female's perspective. Morgane, his sister, and his mother, and the other women, the priestesses in Avalon. It's a very, very magical story, about the time period. Now, I don't know too much about King Arthur's court, whether he was a real person, a real historical figure that people have now based myths off of, or what have you. I do want to do some more research on that because I'd be very interested to find out. If anyone has any suggestions of places I can start, please let me know in the comments. But it's pretty much during the time period when Christianity is taking over in the British Isles. The Romans have left, and the pagan religions are the dominant, and the Christians are coming in, and it's that dividing line essentially between the worlds, if you will. So yeah, so far I'm really enjoying it. I'm only about 3 or 4 hours in. It's a 50-hour long audiobook. So the 3 audiobooks that I have for the rest of the summer to listen to for my book bingo are epically long. I think Paris is about 40 hours, and I think The Valley of Amazement is about 40 hours. So I gotta get listening and listening quickly. I'm gonna have to start listening at home when I'm just like playing around on the computer or something just to catch up. But yeah, so that's what I'm listening to currently on audio. And the book that I picked up for this week is John Irving's Last Night in Twisted River. This is a story about a man and his son and at a logging camp in New Hampshire in 1954. And I started reading this book 6 years ago, roughly, this week. I bought this on my honeymoon, and we'll be 6 years married in a couple weeks. And I started reading it, and I got about chapter 5, so about that far in, and then it got put in the suitcase to come home. And I pulled it out of the suitcase and stuck it on the shelf and never picked it up after that. So I have started to reread it because I don't remember well enough what happened at the beginning. But yeah, like I said, it takes place in 1954 at a logging and sawmill settlement in northern New Hampshire. I'll just read you the back because it's probably easier than me trying to explain it. An anxious 12-year-old boy mistakes the local constable's girlfriend for a bear, but the 12-year-old and his father become fugitives, forced to run from Coos County to Boston to southern Vermont to Toronto, persuaded by the implacable constable. Their lone protector is a fierce logger, once a river driver, who befriends them. In a story spanning 5 decades, Last Night in Twisted River depicts the recent half-century in the United States, but so far I'm really enjoying it. John Irving's writing is fantastic. My favorite book by him was A Prayer for Own Meaning. I haven't read, though, The World According to Garp or The Cider House Rules, so those I do eventually want to read. But this one, I love the cover. The cover stood out to me at the bookstore. I think it was a recent release when I had purchased it 6 years ago, so highly enjoyable so far. I'm only about 2 chapters in. Not very far at all. This might be a harder read. I'm thinking I may not even have any books next week completed to share with you guys. So I'm only that far in, and it's a thick book. It's a chunky book. I might have to just pick up like a Nancy Drew just to break it up and read through it real quick. Just to have something to review for you guys for next week. So anyway, before I continue to go on and on, that is it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them. And until my next video, guys, take care and happy reading. Bye.